All right, we'll go ahead and start in about 30 seconds. All right, well, welcome everybody to this morning's SACOG Board of Directors meeting. Will everybody please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? And Director Baines, will you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, good morning, everybody. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
All right, let's get going.
Sorry.
All right, all good, all good. All right, well, let's go ahead and get into today's meeting. Lynette, any you want to roll call or any other items you want to, household items beforehand?
No housekeeping updates. I can go ahead and take roll.
Sounds good.
Thank you. Director Baines? Bradford?
Here.
Branscombe?
Yes.
Houlihan?
Here.
Chapman?
Here.
Desmond?
Here.
Dowden Calvillo absent. Frost? Here. Gallardo?
Here.
Gog absent. Guerrero absent. Harris? Howdeshell?
Here.
Jennings?
Here.
Joyner?
Here.
Jones? Absent. Hume? Absent. Nisley? Absent. Kozlowski?
Here.
Lauren? Here. Lozano?
Here.
Burris for McCully?
Here.
Sander? Absent. Schaefer?
Here.
Teeter? Thomas absent. Vane? Here. Vega? Absent. Villegas? Vice Chair Soon?
Here.
Chair Saragosa?
Here.
And ex officio member Tucker for Aceves.
Here.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. We will move on to public communications. This is the time for anyone who wishes to address the board on an item that does not appear elsewhere on the agenda. Is there any member of the public who wishes to address the board? Do we have anybody online?
There's no public communication.
All right, thank you. So we'll move to our new item. Well, not new anymore, but are there any directors who need to disclose a conflict with any items that are on today's agenda? And I don't see anybody online as well, so I think we're good there. So we'll move to the consent calendar. These items are intended to be approved in one motion. However, any item can be removed for separate discussion. Does a director wish to remove an item? Is there anyone from the public, Madam Clerk, who wishes to remove an item?
There is a public comment for item number 4.
Great. So let's go ahead and do public comments then. And John Lim, if you'd like to come forward. Thank you for being with us this morning.
Good morning, Board of Directors. My name is John Lim. I am the president of the Marysville Chinese community. You'll see that we are partnering up with the city of Marysville for the EEI grant. I actually really wasn't expecting to speak this morning. I just wanted to come and make sure. So let me take this moment to thank each and every one of you for your consideration and for this program, for all the work that's gone forward. Quite honestly, I see this as an opportunity for the Marysville Chinese community to bring some new life into that whole area and to vitalize things. With this grant, just in this portion of it, I've already contacted, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 5 local areas, businesses in the area that will be able to help me implement this grant. which normally wouldn't have been able to happen because, quite honestly, we couldn't afford to do something like this. And then also, I feel that in the end, our deliverable product will be something that would coincide with what the city's vision is of what the general plan is altogether. And it'll give us a small voice to say, to help preserve something that I feel is very important as one of the last remaining Chinatowns in California, considering that California Chinese immigrants had a rich history to play in it all, from agriculture to transportation in the with railroads, gold mining, and then just supporting the community in and of itself. Um, so in closing, again, I just from the bottom of my heart, thank you so very much for your consideration and for this opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Lim, and thank you for making the journey out to be with us this morning. We appreciate it. All right, do we have any other public comments on the consent items?
No other public comment on consent.
All right, we'll go ahead and close public comment, bring it back to the board.
Lauren moves.
Bradford will second.
All right, we have a first and a second. Seeing no other-
A quick comment if I
Yes,
could.
of course.
No-
Director Branscombe.
Normally when something's on, well, actually when things are on consent, they're gonna happen. My dad used to say, when the customer says yes, say thank you and shut up. But I'm glad Mr. Lim did show up. It matters. No, they're really engaged about this and very excited about it. So thank you.
Thank you, Director Branscombe. Well said. All right, we'll go ahead and have roll call, please.
Thank you. Director Baines,
Aye.
Bradford,
Aye.
Branscombe, Houlihan,
Aye.
Chapman,
Aye.
Desmond, Davin Calvillo absent, Frost, Gallardo,
Yes.
Gog, absent Guerrero, absent Harris, Powdershelt,
Yes.
Jennings,
Yes.
Joyner,
Yes.
Jones absent, Hume absent, Nisley absent, Kozlowski,
Yes.
Lauren, Lozano,
Aye.
Burris for McCully,
Aye.
Sander absent, Schaefer,
Yes.
Teeter, Thomas absent, Vang, Vega absent, Villegas,
Yes.
Vice Chair Soon,
Yes.
and Chair Saragosa.
Yes.
Thank you.
Chair Saragosa, can
Yes.
I'm also not going to follow Director Branscome's father's advice either, apparently. I just want to really appreciate Mr. Lim for coming down, and I did actually sort of put him up to coming to say something. So really, that was my fault. But why I wanted to do that is, A, this is the second trip he's made down here. Came down at the Transportation Committee and gave great testimony on this grant and what it means for the Chinese community in Marysville and the city. And this is really we put this on consent because it came through unanimously, but this is the culmination of 4 years of work, as we talked about quite a bit at the Transportation Committee through the Engage, Empower, Implement program. A lot of great work by your staff, a lot of listening and learning. And we were not sure if we would get $3.8 million worth of grants for this program. And we were not sure if we would get applications from every county. But we were oversubscribed and we got applications from every county, every community, I think, because we were out there listening and engaging. And that just relates back to something else you're going to hear later this board meeting on our race equity inclusion working group, REI working group, kind of look back the last couple of years. And I appreciate, even though Director Howdeshell is on the phone right now with somebody very important, he did make this comment that it was so helpful to have the offsite board meetings and to be in Marysville for the tour 18 months ago to connect this grant back to something that he as mayor of Roseville has actually seen firsthand. So I want to try to connect those dots for you all, tee up a little bit of the REI working group summary that's coming, and just thank Mr. Lim for coming down here and showing the passion that we know he has and the community has up in Marysville. So I want to finally just thank our staff who we did this in the Transportation Committee, but Rosie and Nicole did a heck of a lot of work on this whole program, and I think you're seeing the results of that, and we can't wait to get started. So
Thank you, James. All right. We will move to our action item for this morning. That's item number 5, and that's the 2025 blueprint. our draft final transportation project list and performance. And Mr. Holston has this for us this morning. Thank you.
Good morning. So just a short presentation for you this morning. So this item in front of you today is kind of the culmination of about 2 years worth of work, testing different pathways, doing a big call for projects for transportation investments to be considered in this blueprint. Lots of back and forth with your local staff and with many of you to get to where we're at today. We have a project list that the Land Use and Natural Resources Committee recommended to move forward to the board today. That project list, when you combine it with the land use assumptions the board adopted this past June, shows a lot of really kind of remarkable change over the course of the next 20 years in the region. Some really large increases in access to jobs but through transit, homes with access to higher quality transit. A lot of that comes from increasing frequency on existing transit routes. So this is a lot of existing homes that are getting improved access to kind of jobs and opportunity throughout the region. See walk and bike mode shares shift up a little bit, so you're getting more people out engaging in active transportation. Some strategic investments in areas with extreme heat, flood, fire risks. Those are there both to facilitate some growth. Also, there is the evacuation side of that equation. But we tried to also limit the exposure of adding new infrastructure into some of these higher risk areas. Household VMT per capita we see coming down. That's what really drives the greenhouse gas metric that I'll get to on the next slide, from about 17.4 today or in 2020 to about a mile less by 2035. So that's average spread across the entire population. So transit riders, people that don't drive, it's a per capita metric. And then congestion we do see going up slightly as a share of total VMT in the region, but it's a fairly small, about a 1% increase by 35, about a 2% increase by 2050. So it's not a large increase in congestion. So we were trying to solve for both the VMT reductions we need to drive the greenhouse gas targets, increases in accessibility throughout the region to jobs, to opportunity, as well as trying to make sure that we have a smooth operating system. All of that on the greenhouse gas side does get us to a scenario where we believe we achieve the greenhouse gas target. This is all subject to CARB review, so there's more to come on that, but we do think we have a defensible scenario now when you combine the land use and the transportation interactions, when you build in the region's investments and other things like ITS, EV, car sharing, micromobility, things like that. We have a path now to get to our 19% greenhouse gas target. At both the transportation and land use committees earlier this month, we did receive a letter from Caltrans wanting some changes to the way that we describe the toll lanes or the managed lanes within the plan. The gist of that was to remove some of the specificity we had in the project list. On the SACOG side, we felt we needed some level of this specificity to very much define the project for the sake of meeting our air quality conformity goals, as well as for CEQA. The action before you from land use is they did recommend the project list move forward to the board the way that it was written. However, we offered to go back to Caltrans and see if we had some space to make some changes that would be amenable to both agencies. That is what is in the pink sheet in front of you, and also on the board. The minor change on that 99, I think it specified the inside lane. We removed that. That's kind of a detail that isn't that big of a deal when you look at it from a regional perspective. And then for the others, what Caltrans would be comfortable with is for now we remove their name as the sponsor agency, but we can maintain these projects and we can address kind of sponsorship down the line. So those would be the proposed changes that I believe SACOG and Caltrans were comfortable with. That would be something you would need to add to the motion today, because that wasn't part of the recommendation from Land Use Committee. Here's the recommendation is to move this project list forward as to be part of the final preferred scenario for the 2025 blueprint. With that action, if you choose to do that today, we will be off to the races with writing the plan document, writing the EIR. We'll return to you early next year to start talking a lot more about policy and implementation strategy. What did the region do? What do local agencies do to implement this plan to try to move it forward? We'll be coming back very early next year, because by May is when we would need to be releasing a draft of this plan to get out on the street, to get public review, and then respond to all those comments and then get us adopted by the end of 2025. So that would be what would be coming to you next year with the action today. So very brief presentation, but I'm more than happy to answer any questions or take comments.
Thank you, Clint. Do we have any questions? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and open. Oh, Director Frost, sorry.
I know there was a lot of communications over the months, and you know, at times people were concerned about, you know, what projects would be included, and you did a really good job communicating and working with us, and we thank you for it.
Thanks. Director.
I apologize. This may have come after Director Branscom's dad's sound advice, but did we have a report on what the status with the Caltrans situation is? You got it.
Yes, and resolved.
Okay.
Essentially, they're TBDs.
Okay,
We've come to an acceptable agreement.
to both parties.
Yeah.
Okay.
Through the chair.
Yes.
I just like to note that in the transportation project list, our project to widen Riego Road from State Route 99 to Placer County line on page 86 of the 312-page packet has been increased to $100 million. So I thank you. That Sutter County appreciates the outreach from SACOG staff to discuss our various projects and the inclusion of projects for our agency as well as our cities that'll benefit the community and assist in the meeting the greenhouse gas reduction target. So we look forward to the next phase of the plan's development where the policies will be discussed and finalized. So thank you, staff, for all that you guys have done. Appreciate it.
Through the chair.
Yes.
We
just
need
wanna-
to look left.
I know.
Yeah.
I just want to echo Director Frost's comments and thank staff for the collaborative and iterative approach on working through this with all the jurisdictions. I know Yuba County greatly appreciates the conversation we had and the effort and just, you know, working through our concerns and getting to a place where I think we're all, I just speak for myself, we're comfortable with this moving forward and we're really appreciative.
Yes.
I guess I'm going to be the problem child here for a moment. I have a concern specific to Lincoln. And that is that I don't get the sense that staff understands how fast things are moving on the ground in South Placer and in Lincoln in particular. And I'll give you an example of that. On the list is a Ferrari Ranch Road Village 7 bridge. And it's in and planned. It's built. It's already been completed. There's 700 homes going in that are feeding off of that bridge as we speak. And so the reason I bring that up is to say this: what is missing on the list is something that's extremely important to Lincoln's future. And that is the overcrossing, the interchange at Highway 65 and Nelson Lane. That will feed what will be our business center, our job center for the next 25, 30 years, which is Village 5. And I understand that you probably don't have it listed here because Village 5 has not yet been annexed, but it almost certainly will be by the end of the year. So I know my staff has been reaching out, trying to get that back on the list. And I recognize that if things change on the ground, we could have another conversation and get it back on the list the next time it comes around. But that could be happening much faster than you think it's happening. So if there's a way to reach back out to my staff, get that back on the list, that is probably one of the most important future projects for Lincoln and for reducing our vehicle miles traveled. Because if we don't have that and we don't have that job center, we're all going into Sacramento and into Roseville and into Rockland. And so is Sheridan. And so is Wheatland. And so we very much need that job center and the infrastructure that is going to support that.
I think as on the first point as well, on the completed project that we're showing it in and planned, we'll for sure follow up on that. I know that there's a lot of projects in this list and we don't keep pace with every status of them. So we'll follow up with Lincoln staff, but we'll make sure we follow up on both issues.
Can you just, maybe again, Clint, state for the record, in terms of local projects, if they're not on this list, can they move forward or are they stuck? I think it's important. to remind.
They can move forward with local funds. The not being on the list would preempt you from going after a federal or state grant. But you can spend, if you've got local tax money, measure money, anything like that, you can move a project forward. We will amend this list again. We will do a call for amendments to the programmed projects, to the early years projects, starting the very beginning of next year. So when you adopt this plan, some of that front part of that list will have already changed. And then in 2026, we will have to do another adoption of the MTIP. So it's another opportunity to amend the plan and any projects that have moved forward that we didn't foresee. So you have that chance in 26. And then the next plan in 27, we would have to make some changes for anything that is kind of shaking out different than what we forecasted. So there are opportunities. And yes, with local funds, you can move a project forward. It's the federal and state grant side that we lose on.
Understood. I think my staff's greatest concern right now is if we're off the list, getting through the NEPA process.
Yeah, right.
And Director Joyner, we have definitely been in conversation with your staff and I with Sean Scully, your city manager. And I would say you're in a similar situation that a lot of the jurisdictions around this table are in, which is they're not just greenhouse gas emissions, right? We talked about fiscal constraint, and we hear you. In fact, we got growth in Placer County this plan. We got more growth in the last plan, but there's also there's a fiscal constraint issue. Sacramento County. I mean, Director Frost, you just mentioned this, right? You had a very long list. Your staff did of projects you wanted to bring in, and I just want to point out to everybody. A lot of those, and I'm not talking now about Nelson, I'm talking about generally speaking, and this is not a ticket to actually get your project funded if you're on this list. This is sort of a permission slip, right? And that permission slip is going to lean on a lot of state and federal discretionary funding, probably more than we are able to bring down. So that's a separate topic, but I just want to remind everybody what the list is and what it's not. So we have engaged with your staff, and my understanding was on Nelson, if we brought that in, we'd bringing a lot of other projects in based on sort of where it stands fiscally. That could change. And if it does change, we'll continue to work with you and your staff to amend it.
All right. James, on that point of amendments, does that work? Is that a staff level then? Like if you were to swap a project out, for lack of a better term, like in this case with Director Joyner, where there's one actually that's already completed, or would these come back to either a committee or to the board?
A change of that scale would come back to the board.
Okay.
There are things that we make that are modifications. If it's a minor change to budget or a minor change to a year, or it's a project that doesn't have an air quality impact, we can make those through administrative modifications. If it's anything that would change the findings of our air quality analysis, those would be amendments that would need to come back to the board. And they also would go through an interagency consultation review and all that beforehand.
All right. Yes, Director
Thank
Branscombe.
I imagine many of you are aware that we've had a significant traffic problem in and around Marysville due to the Hotel Marysville fire. Barring an unexpected event between now and noon today, we should have a settlement in our litigation with the hotel owners. And parallel to that, even if that falls apart, we have a plan to reopen the state highway. Target is sometime in January. Once it gets reopened, due to the work that's been done on Highway 70, north and south, and the planned work on Highway 70, there's going to be induced demand for even more traffic through Marysville. And again, Highway 20 and Highway 70 cross like this right in the center of Marysville. It's a burden on transiting traffic. We do reap some economic benefits. There's lots of gas stations and fast food along those routes. But there's a balance that we're looking for. And so even though we're going to solve the traffic problems caused by the fire, the other issues will remain and they will become more intense problems. And therefore, the county, Yuba County, has a proposal for a connector between Highway 20 and Highway 70. Not that expensive in the scheme of things for such a connector. Requires a bridge across the Yuba River. That will be a major part of my next 4 years as we move along, and it will help the region. I think traffic problems and traffic through Marysville affect Sutter County, Yuba County, Butte County, South Placer County for sure. And it will aid the entire region. It's a regional problem, and hopefully we'll have a regional response. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Any other comments or questions at this time? All right.
Mr. Chair, I
yes.
just want to simply say,
Yes.
in kind of putting a bow on the lunar meeting last week, it was a little bit challenging at the end. I think, I'll just simply say thank you to staff for continuing to work on this, not only up to last week's meeting, but throughout the course of the weekend to conclude, I think, on Tuesday, and land the plane in a better spot. Upset. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll go ahead and open up for public comments. I do have one here in front of me from Miss Jeannie Ward Waller. If you'll come on up. Good morning.
Good morning, Chair and Board. I'm very happy to be with you. I'm Jeannie Wardwaller. I am the interim director of an organization called Climate Plan. Can you hear me? Okay. Mic's always a little low for me. And also the board president of Civic Thread here locally. We sent you a letter along with several other community-based organizations on this item. Really want to raise concerns to you about this issue that you've been talking about some of the discrepancies between what's in your project list and what is in Caltrans District 3 Managed Lane System Plan. And the assumptions that go into what is in your project list, what gets modeled in your plan are really important. Specifically, how much highway expansion is done in your plan. And that is really going to be contingent on whether or not you can reach your GHG target in your plan, whether or not you're eligible for a lot of state and federal funds. And so the assumptions that go into your plan are really, really important to our region. And we are concerned about the discrepancies. And we asked a bunch of questions in our letter. We'd really like staff to clarify to you, to us, to the public, what those assumptions are. You know, frankly, we think, you know, we would not like to see a lot of those projects move forward as expansions. We're concerned about that and how much additional traffic that's going to bring into our region. So we just want to raise that concern to you. As you're approving this plan, as you're moving forward, you know, this is really critical to our region, how our region grows. And so we, yeah, encourage you to look closer at that. And we would like to not see the highways actually expanded to be able to build managed lanes in our region. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. We have any other public comments on item 5? People here in the room. Being none, I think we have some written comments as well.
We do. Chair Saragos, if it's okay, I can read those now.
Yes.
The first comment is from Woody Deloria, the Executive Director of the El Dorado County Transportation Commission. He says, I wanted to express my support and gratitude for the staff work performed to develop the draft MTP project list for agenda item number 5. Through extensive engagement, EDCTC and SACOG were able to reach agreement on the projects included in the MTP, which serve the needs of El Dorado County and contribute to the region's transportation and climate adaptation goals. We are now looking forward to continued coordination with SACOG and other regional partners to secure state and federal funding for these regionally significant projects. We also have a written comment from Michael Garabedian with Placer County Tomorrow. He says his position is opposed. Placer County has no meaningful solution for its current and future SR 65 and I-80 highway congestion. Measure B that just passed in Roseville, Rockland, and Lincoln after failing countywide in 2016 will do virtually nothing to relieve congestion. Placer County Planning Department and Board of Supervisor multiple major to massive housing project approvals defy any concept of good planning and result in lowering of planning standards and practices throughout the SACOG region. The Placer County Conservation Plan violates the California Natural Communities Conservation Plan law requirement of landscape level ecosystem protection and the California Southern and Oregon Vernal Pool Prairie Recovery Plan. South Sacramento has done better. That concludes the written comments, but I did just also want to point out, we received 3 letters, one from the Environmental Council of Sacramento, one from Jeannie Ward Waller, which was just alluded to in her public comment, and then also from Dawn Mooney, legal counsel for ECOS. And I was just handed a public comment card for this item for Matt Darrow with SAC Department of Transportation.
Yep,
Would you like to have his
Yes.
comment?
come on.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Thanks for letting me slip that in there real quick. I came down this and I was sitting there thinking, you know, I need to pipe up and kind of echo what Supervisor Frost said. I'm Matt Darrow with the Sac County Department of Transportation, and you know, we did go back and forth quite a bit with SACOG staff, and we appreciate, we're happy where this ended up. And we look forward to kind of moving forward, and wanted to thank Zach and
I want to
Christina and her team.
lean closer into the mic there. Yeah.
Too far away?
There
Sorry.
you go. Perfect.
But I want to say thanks to SACOG staff for kind of getting to where we got here today. I did have one follow-up question, and I'm not sure who could answer, but I heard Lincoln kind of mention getting added to the list in the future. I'm wondering if somebody could answer how competitive would those projects be in terms of going for funding in the future? Are we still going to have the same competitiveness for future funding if you're added to the list later on? Because I know County of Sac has some projects that over the years we want to get back on there as well. But wanted to say thanks, and I don't know if somebody could address that too.
Thank you for your comments. And
Yeah,
Staff,
so-
do you have any comments to the comment?
I can say that if you're on the project list, you are consistent with the MTP SES. So your standing comes down to the merits of your project. Inclusion on the list makes you consistent and gives you the permission slip to go after those funds. Competitiveness, you'd be competitive based on what program you're going after. It's going to come down to the criteria in that program, but you shouldn't be advantaged or disadvantaged from your listing on the project list.
Thank you, Clint. Or Director Desmond.
Thank you. Thanks for the response. Thank you, Matt, for bringing that up. I just want to comment on that because I think there was an issue. Again, thank you, SACOG staff, of course, for working with Sacramento County. But as projects are added, I think there was some concern about the timing of adding those projects, and would it be too tight to be eligible for some of the funding? So I just asked staff to be cognizant of that, and because I think that could potentially become an issue. But beyond that, I'm prepared to move the item with the amendment to staff recommendation to incorporate reclassifying the Caltrans projects to non-sponsored projects. If that's appropriate for the motion?
I'll offer a second. All right, thank you both. And Vice Chair, I think you have a comment.
Chair Saragosa, we do
Yes.
have Director Gallardo with her hand raised, and I did just receive another public comment card.
All right, looks like we got two. All right, so let's go into the public comments, and then we'll go to Director Gallardo, then Vice Chair soon.
The
Oh, wait,
first
we do have a-
commenter is Luce Lim.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for taking my comment last minute. I am here on behalf of the Environmental Council of Sacramento. As mentioned, we submitted a comment letter, and I was just hoping to read a few excerpts from it just to raise some points now for your discussion. ECOS urges the SACOG board to adopt a policy that in its 2025 blueprint that requires agreement on specific project scope descriptions before the regional plan is finalized. Agree that the project so described will be alternatives considered in the NEPA CEQA analyses and requires the selected alternative to meet or exceed the greenhouse gas emission performance of the project modeled in the regional plan. Because highway projects have such a large effect on greenhouse gas and air pollutant emissions, and because tolling of highway lanes is a key travel demand strategy, GHG strategy, that can make or break the region's ability to meet the state target established by the California Air Resources Board, this suggested policy is particularly important for Caltrans and SACOG. In the November 7th transportation meeting, Caltrans expressed concerns that the regional plan, through its specific project description, not lock in a specific alternative for a project prior to NEPA CEQA analysis. Caltrans said the regional plan should include unspecific scope descriptions for projects. And if this would not be acceptable to SACOG, Caltrans would pull its projects from the regional plan entirely. To preserve Caltrans' flexibility and protect SACOG's need to be able to count on a certain level of greenhouse gas emissions performance in its submittal to CARB for SB 375 compliance, as well as the performance regarding criteria pollutants regulated under the Federal Clean Act, we propose that you insert performance language like the following into the 2025 blueprint. We realize there are a range of alternatives for constructing the managed lane system. A specific scope description has been included in the regional plan for estimating greenhouse gas emissions for SB 375 compliance. Following the environmental analysis, Caltrans will choose the alternative to implement, but if it differs from the SACOG plan, it must meet or exceed the greenhouse gas emission performance modeled in the regional plan through its direct impacts and/or mitigation strategy. It also must meet or exceed Federal Clean Air Act requirements for criteria pollutants. And to facilitate this, Caltrans will communicate to SACOG in a timely manner regarding any proposed projects that are inconsistent with SACOG's regional plan. And SACOG staff
30 seconds.
will identify in writing to Caltrans and other relevant entities any inconsistencies between Caltrans' proposed projects and SACOG's regional plans. Thank you so much for listening, and we hope you consider including these. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. We have-
Our next public speaker is Dan Allison with STAR.
Morning, Dan.
Good morning. Dan Allison speaking on behalf of Sacramento Transit Advocates and Riders this morning. Our comments on the project list are several. One is, what's the interest of a transit organization in this project list? Every roadway capacity expansion is a harm to transit. It's money that could be going to transit, but instead is going to motor vehicles. It's a inducement for people to drive by making it easier for people to drive. We're subsidizing private motor vehicle drivers and therefore harming transit. So that's our interest in this project list. The disparity between the SACOG goals and Caltrans goals has kind of been said it's not that important by SACOG. It is important. SACOG's goal is and should be reduction of greenhouse gas emissions so that it can meet the target, so that it's eligible for funding. Caltrans' goal is build more stuff. That's what Caltrans wants to do. And those are not compatible goals. So Caltrans must be brought into alignment with SACOG. HOV lanes are mentioned as one of the possible alternatives for managed lanes. They are not a VMT reduction method. They don't work. Caltrans knows that. SACOG knows that. The public knows that. They do not work. They should not be listed as an alternative for any managed lanes. And the project list pushes a lot of managed lanes projects out to the far edge of the blueprint or even beyond the blueprint. And I don't understand why that's being done. They are the most important thing right now for managing VMT and improving our transportation system, and they should be happening as soon as possible. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan, for your comments. Any?
No other public comment.
All right, we'll go ahead to Director Gallardo. Sorry, I missed your hand up there.
No problem. It's just and thank you. First of all, my apologies. As you probably realize, several of us are from Placer County or Placer business. So those that are not on right now and present we're missing a few. I just one of the public
Director Gallardo, this is Lynette. I'm sorry to interrupt you. You're blinking out just a little bit. Could you try turning off your video to see if that helps with reception?
You got it.
Thank you.
I just wanted to refer one of the public commenters, to the passage of Measure B. And I wanted to declare that that is not passing. While it's sitting at about 4%, it requires a supermajority, and it does not look like it's successful.
Thank you, Director Gallardo. And I think Vice Chair, you have comments?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I also want to echo my sentiments. Thanks to staff and all of our agency staff for working together to bring this very complex discussion to meeting our current requirement. But I wanted to highlight, the complexity and the unsustainable nature of this, meaning that going forward, I want everyone to ask everyone to look to the future, and we need to come up with a macro solution that will help us with this plan update in the future. So just encourage everyone to start thinking about those things as we look to the future years. So with that, Chair, back to you.
All right. And we have a first and a second on the floor. Do we have any other further discussion or questions? All right, seeing none, I will call a roll call vote, please.
Thank you. Director Baines?
Aye.
Bradford?
Aye.
Branscombe?
Aye.
Houlihan?
Aye.
Chapman? Desmond? Dowden Calvillo absent. Frost?
Aye.
Gallardo? Director Gallardo, could you indicate your vote
Or a thumbs up?
or a thumbs up? I'll come back to you. Director Gog absent, Guerrero absent, Harris? Howdeshelt?
Yes.
Jennings?
Yes.
Joyner?
Aye.
Jones absent, Hume?
Aye.
Nisley absent, Kozlowski?
Aye.
Lauren?
Aye.
Lozano?
Aye.
Burris for McCully?
Aye.
Sander absent, Schaefer?
Aye.
Teeter? Thomas absent, Vang? Vega? Villegas? Vice Chair Soon?
Aye.
Chair Saragosa?
Aye.
And Director Gallardo, if you're there, could you indicate your vote, please? Okay, I'll mark her absent.
All right, thank you, Lynette. That motion carries. So thank you, everyone. And again, I'd like to reiterate my thanks to the staff as well as to all of our agency staff for the incredible amount of hard work, especially when you see it after all the work done, really boiled down to a simple document, but we know how much work went into all that. So thank you to everybody, James and team. So appreciate that. All right, moving along, we're going to move to item 6. And that is our Race Equity and Inclusion Working Group update. And Director Jennings and Vice Chair Soon are going to present this item. And then I encourage those that have been part of REI to weigh in and give your perspective as well. But I'll hand it back over to them.
Thank you, Chair. Totally agree that we want everyone to participate in this presentation that we're getting ready to make right now. I'm really happy to be here today with Vice Chair Darren Soon. And I want to ask a question. How many go back and can remember when Billy White Shoes Johnson used to score a touchdown in the end zone? If you're old enough to remember that, raise your hand.
I'm gonna show you.
If you can show me that, man, I got a whole floor. I got right here. But you remember that, right? How many? Raise your hand if you remember that, right? Okay. So
I'm a football player.
and the only reason that he celebrated was because he got in the end zone and he scored a touchdown. And when you score a touchdown, it makes you closer to winning the game. When you win the game, you can then go into the playoffs and try to win the playoffs. So each one kind of builds on the other. So that's one thing. How many, and I know the whole room knows this, but I just have to ask the question. How many remember when the Kings win a game and they do what? Come on, let me hear you. They do what?
Light the line.
So last night, they lit the beam, they punched the cowbells, they did it all because they won a major game. So what they do in these situations, this is their time to celebrate, right? Whether it's a touchdown that you score or whether it's a basketball game that you win, and all of us do the same thing. When we accomplish something and we've done it and we've done well, we put a plan in place and we've executed that plan. When we do it, there should be some form of celebration. And so this is a celebration. And I'm asking you to join Vice Chair Darren Soon and I in the celebration of the accomplishments of the REI group over the last 2 years. And so this is my way of saying, as Muhammad Ali would say, I'm gonna brag a little bit. We got something to talk about. And so we're gonna do that right now. We're gonna celebrate our major achievements of working together. And if you don't know what the acronym TEAM stands for, it stands for Together Everyone Achieves More. And that's what we've done. We have achieved more together. And that's what that slide says. Together, we've accomplished a lot. Next slide, please.
As Director Jennings talked about, we had a goal at the SACOG board to deepen our understanding of how race, ethnicity, income, geography in the rural and urban areas affects our social outcomes of communities throughout the Sacramento region. And before I get into that part, I just want to add on to what Director Jennings opened with. Today marks, and I just learned about this in the last couple of days. Today, November 14th, 1960, back in 1960, Ruby Bridges. I see my Director Bang nodding. Ruby Bridges was the first African-American child to integrate into an all-white elementary school. At the age of 6 years old, she did this, and it was amazing to me. Amazing that she had such courage being at that young age. Imagine being escorted by federal marshals into the classroom. Amazing at the vitriol she endured. I mean, obviously parents removing their kids from school, things like that, but parents threatening to poison her. Amazing that the community came together and showed support for her parents, giving her father a job, making them being able to stay in the community. This was in Louisiana. And amazing that not everywhere, but in some places, we still have to fight for equality and justice for some of our population. And so what we've done here today in the last couple of years, and we're celebrating today, is this commitment to better understand one another at, I mentioned race equity, but also our urban and suburban and rural communities, and how we can be a better region, how we can achieve better success by demanding and realizing the potential, all the potential that we have to offer. And so we did that these last couple of years. We held board meetings in all 6 counties. 3 of those places we did tours. And so the first one was in Roseville, and I'm glad to say I was able to make this one. But this photograph that you see here was how the city of Roseville and the Health Education Council built relationships and listened and learned from its residents of Roseville's core neighborhoods to improve health. Roseville learned a lot from the process and really listened to residents, and all together they were able to make positive improvements for the neighborhoods. And if those of you who were there that day also remember, where's Mayor Huldershot? Is he on here?
He's on the
screen. We got a great sandwich recommendation from you, Mayor Huldershot in Roseville. That's what I most remember. Next slide, please.
So SACOG continues to deepen its understanding of the region by moving from Roseville to Yuba City. So how many in the room were at Yuba City? Raise your hand. All right, good. So you can help me out with this. That's the photo that's on the left. We learned about how infill development opportunities and mobility hubs, by being tailored to the unique conditions of different communities, can achieve important local and regional goals at the same time. The photo on the right is an Ag Start in Woodland. There we learned about the importance of the agriculture and the ag tech sectors to building the local and regional economy. We also learned later that day on how the Center for Land-Based Learning is working to close racial and age disparities in the architectural sector. Next slide, please.
In El Dorado County, and the photo on the left, we learned about the unique challenges and opportunities of agritourism in Apple Hill. Later that morning, we also learned what transportation equity means in the rural parts of El Dorado County. In Marysville, in the photo on the right, as we heard earlier from Mayor Branscombe and Mr. Lim, they took a tour of Chinatown and learned about its long, vibrant history.
So we've gone from Roseville to where?
El Dorado County?
No, Roseville to next.
Oh, you guys went to Woodland.
Woodland.
We went to Yuba City. Then we left Yuba City and then we went to Woodland. And then we went to El Dorado. Okay,
Marysville.
so how about Yuba County? Where we had oh, I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong slide.
Right. You're
So
there.
we're in Marysville, is that right?
Yeah, that's Marysville.
Okay,
That's
on the
Marysville.
right is
Next slide.
Marysville.
No,
We
next
took-
slide, next slide. There you go.
Yeah, there we go.
We went to El Dorado County, Marysville, and now we're in Yuba County.
Okay, well, you did Marysville.
Yes, sir.
Good, thank you. I missed the bus. So let's go to Yuba County, where we heard the great presentation about the positive impact of SACOG's funding program and technical assistance in the Olivehurst and Linda neighborhoods, 2 rural disadvantaged communities. With our help, the county was able to rebuild sidewalks and where there were none, so kids could really walk, ride, and get to school in a safe manner. And these are such important things right now because if kids have a fear of getting to school, if their parents have a fear of sending them to school, then attendance stops and then learning stops. And so being able to do something as simple as making it a safe route to get to school is something that's so important that we do for our kids and our families and our communities. So they now can safely walk to school and we're very happy about that. Next slide, please.
Now, closer to where I grew up in South Sacramento, we learned more about the positive impacts of SACOG's funding program on communities. In the photo on the left, we toured Stockton Boulevard and heard about all the work the community's doing on bus rapid transit and pedestrian safety. And on the photo on the right at La Familia, we learned about La Familia's community engagement process to design safer street for pedestrians in all modes of travel. And we learned about how through all their community engagement, they've built out programming at their campus. Rachel Rios over there has done a fantastic job. Next slide, please.
And finally, in our most recent SACOG board meetings, we learned about the Dangerous by Design report on pedestrian traffic violence and the pedestrian safety crisis that's in our region and how disproportionately it hurts people of color, low income, and older people. But we also learned from Civic Thread about creative quick builds, solutions that can be designed with communities to make unsafe streets safe. And what I love about this is design with communities. It's not something we're giving them or putting at them, it's designed with them. So their voice is so important. We learned about SACOG's funding program that can be used by our communities to creatively and quickly create safer streets for pedestrians. And so I just want to stop for a second as we talk about everything that we've done and the successes that we've had and ask any board members if they have any reflections that they'd like to share about the workshops and the tours that we've taken over the last 2 years. If we came to your area, if we came to your part of jurisdiction, what's been the impact? What did you think about when we came there? I just want to kind of open it up, if you will. Not to put you on spot. Yes, ma'am.
I would just want to mention that you get the information that you need sometimes right when you need it. And Dangerous by Design is something that I think about on a daily basis because Winters is in a growth phase and there's a lot of housing that's just about to be built and business all together and kids have to go to school. There's, hundreds of people that will need to go one direction while other people are going to work in another direction across the highway. Every step of that process, I'm going to be thinking about Dangerous by Design. And I really appreciate that SACOG brought that to us at that moment. Thank you.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I currently sit on Delta Highway Coalition we're dealing with constant carnage on Highway 12 and Win 60 and both of the part of 12 is in Sacramento County and Win 60 is totally in Sacramento County. And and in Ileton specifically, there's a peculiar intersection that there's basically 3 streets on it and Win 60 runs through it. And yeah, that's a dangerous intersection. There's a crosswalk and people just speed through there.
I'll go. I mean, I think for me, and I've always been a big fan of getting out and seeing each other's different jurisdictions, because I mean, we all intuitively know that there's issues and problems and needs in all of our areas, but it's another thing to feel it, to touch it, to see it, and to hear firsthand from the people that deal with it every day. So I think just across the board, I don't have anything specific that I was gonna, but just the idea of talking to our, you know, our colleagues here, and, you know, just really getting to understand a little bit better, because there's a responsibility we all have, right, when we sit on this regional board. And the more we understand each other's areas, the better it is for us to make informed decisions. So I think just across the board, I thought it was just a great idea for us to do that. And to Director Jennings, what he's been saying, and Vice Chair Soon, is, you know, we get to see that from a rural, an urban, a suburban perspective, from a person of color perspective, and to blend all those things together and how that all works. And so I just think it's been a great learning experience for myself. I hope it's been for everybody else as well.
So if I can build on the learning experience, right now I'm going through a situation at McClatchy High School, and it is dangerous by design because things have changed over the last 20, 30, 40 years from when kids used to go to school, and the school didn't have the population that it has now. It didn't have the light rail that it has now. It didn't have the bike trails that it has now. And so all that now has congested into one space, and it is now dangerous by design. And so all the places that I've been, and within SACOG, I've learned some things that can help us with that design so we can change some things. So it is very, very much so that we become a learning community, or continue to become a learning community, and learn from each other.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, please.
I want to comment, I'm glad you brought that up, Rick, because I was going to bring that up, because one thing that's really, when we have this discussion about pedestrian safety, I mean, it really does occur to me how these areas were not designed dangerous at the time they were put in, right? It was such a different environment in terms of traffic capacity, in terms of population on some of these corridors, but they have now become dangerous. And it makes our infill challenges even more challenging, right? I mean, to now, it's not just a matter of trying to attract infill in some of these areas, it's changing the infrastructure to accommodate the increased population, increased traffic. And the other factor, I think, and Oscar and I were just talking about, you know, I would love to at some point do a mobile tour in my district. I mean, we have in Arden Arcade, we have the largest concentration of Afghan immigrants, of any Afghan refugees of any community in the country. And that's the other thing, the other dynamic we have to take into account is kind of the habits and some of the, I think the cultural mores of this new population. They use our transportation infrastructure differently than a lot of people who've been here for a lot longer. So once again, I think highlighting some of the challenges that we face, especially in these older infill areas.
Chair Saragosa, Director Haudeshelt has his hand raised.
Yep.
Thank you very much. It was an honor and a pleasure to actually provide the board some insight into the origins of the communities that surround the Union Pacific Yard in Roseville, and how diverse it is. When we get out and we walk areas, whether it's Marysville, whether it's our communities, we see things because we slow down and we take things in. I often, you know, while I didn't have to do it this year, when I'm doing precinct walking, you see things that you just don't see when your busy life is taking place. So this was a fabulous opportunity. There is a seventh community we visited that I thought kind of wrap this all up, and that was SACOG's study mission to Denver, where we had an opportunity to see what they're doing and what they're doing on Route 40 and other things like that. So this is a fabulous opportunity. I hope we're going to continue it and into the next year.
Thank you, Bruce. Director Frost.
Well, I just want to say that I really always have appreciated the tours to the different areas. It stands out to me that a lot of us have maybe a different community, but a lot of our problems are really we have some commonalities. Everyone has homeless people. Everyone has a declining commercial corridor that they're trying to uplift. I was surprised at a couple of things. Number one was the Apple Hill, the complexity of Apple Hill, and how everyone who buys property in Apple Hill has to really agree that they're going to be part of something that's bigger than their own personal property. I thought that was interesting, how they approached the solution to what was at one time a catastrophic loss of a agriculture that they had to change up and rebrand. I thought it was amazing what they did there. And I also thought it was, I was really excited about the dangerous by design, the fact that there are solutions that are cost effective and flexible, that you could actually paint the street, and if it doesn't work, you could try something different a year later and it didn't cost you a lot of money. So those are two things that stood out to me. So it was very a valuable experience for me also. Thank you.
Thanks for sharing. Back to you.
All right. Next slide, please. Well, it's great to hear all the stories and things that our fellow directors have learned. And so while we were listening and learning on all these tours, the REI working group was also learning and listening to all these things. And even some of the public members joined us on these tours. Halfway through that point, the REI working group learned their learnings to define the principles of meaningful community engagement that showed up at the workshops that we heard about. And I think this is really special because all of us, the organizations that we represent, the organizations themselves, the cities, the counties, we're all looking for ways to be engaged with our community, our residents, and trying to find ways to make sure how we can reach them and hear what concerns them. So these principles of meaningful community engagement, I think, are useful to all of us beyond SACOG. So I just wanted to make note of that. And so it's such important work and important product that's come out of this working group. Next slide, please.
So what this slide talks about is that the Race Equity and Inclusion Working Group, their advice on programs help us to get to successful board action. The Engage, Power, Implement program framework, the board approved that last year, approving grant awards in November. And then the regional equity funding round equity framework, the board approved that in October, and the first grant cycle starts in 2025. So with that shared understanding of meaningful community engagement, the REI working group gave SACOG staff important advice on the two programs that I just mentioned. And those are just really instrumental to us. I mean, that working group made up of public citizens, made up of board members, really has just been powerful in its ability to help us as a board move forward. Next slide, please.
Yeah, and you recall we approved those grants this morning, so we're already making progress. And the working group gave us metrics on how to continue this into the future. So there's great feedback. We learned a lot from the community. Forgot the acronym, CBOs. But we learned a lot from all our partners in this effort. And so we're going to receive a presentation on some of these indicators in the near future.
I'm gonna give you the next slide and then I'll take the last, okay?
Oh, yes. So in our effort to continuously improve, to continuously learn, what can we do in the next 2 years? Where we're going next. That's what I'm really excited to embark upon.
So it really says to me as well as failure to plan is planning to fail. And so right now we have to have a plan as to what we're going to do in the next 2 years. So we can then measure where we are against that plan. And if in fact that plan wasn't properly put together, we can go back and revise that plan and put a better plan in place. And so our ability to talk about what we want to accomplish, what I call the BHAGs, big, hairy, audacious goals. You've heard me say that before. And so creating some big BHAGs so that we can then know that we are moving forward successfully together. Again, that team acronym that we talked about, I bring a lot of acronyms, I know that. But hopefully they stick with you and you use them in your own time, right? But just from a schedule standpoint, we've been on a journey together, and the racial board adopted a racial equity statement change and commitment in 2022. Here we are in 2024. Then adopted a racial equity action plan later that year to make good on those commitments. That's what I talk about failure to plan is planning to fail. Then we implemented that plan for 2 years, and you've seen the measured progress. The REI working group will have one more meeting in December to make up its recommendations for updates to the goals and objectives of the SACOG's Racial Equity Action Plan. And then in December, on the 19th, that's where we will take action on those goals and objectives. That's that big pink star that you see there, right before Christmas. Take action on those goals and objectives. So SACOG then can begin the next 2 years of implementation and next 2 years of continued success. And so now you see why we've been bragging, why we have been throwing the football down and doing our Billy White Shoes Johnson dance in end zone, why we've been lighting the beam, why we've been really talking about the great things that we've been able to do together. And the community is energized, and I've seen more communities, whether it be cities or counties, I've seen more of them starting to establish and put forth REI working groups so that they too can be a part of this movement moving forward. And so we're starting to see success in Sacramento, in the Sacramento region, and I'm really excited and happy about that. So, yes.
I just want to say, I don't know if Director Soon's slide was a question, but when you said big, hairy, audacious goals, I have one in mind, and I wonder if it's okay if I share it.
Please.
The idea of diversity, equity, inclusion is something that has been rumbling around in my head. There's something I'm unsettled about it. And I think I'm reminded of a person who I frequently listen to. His name is Victor Davis Hanson. He's a farmer from the Central California. He's a graduate of Stanford. He's a professor at multiple colleges in the United States, including Hillsdale College. And he speaks to this topic of the disappearing citizen. And the fact that in America today, we have so many people coming across the border. We're bringing in people who are, what did you call, my mind just went having a senior moment. The refugees. We have people who are, coming and becoming citizens, in the process of becoming citizens. And we in the Sacramento region have the most diverse region ethnically and culturally, I think, in the United States. Historically, that's been the case. We were an example of what the United States will be in 2059. And so we're lucky because we have all this color, but at the same time, it seems like there's one thing that we all celebrate when we come to America, and that is the opportunity to be in the land of the free, in a country where your dreams can come true, where you have opportunities that you don't have maybe in other countries. And so a big bodacious idea, I can't remember how you said it. You said it so well, though. For me would be that, no matter who comes to our country, wouldn't it be great if they all learned about what our country's about our history, about our Constitution, about the thing that makes us free and gives us the Bill of Rights. And then we would all have that one thing in common and we would be one people. That's something I think would be a good, a bodacious goal, to bring us all together under that one commonality, one people, united.
I
Thank
totally
you.
agree. And,
Yeah.
and to that point, you talked about Ruby Bridges. And I spoke to a group of middle school students about Ruby Bridges, who integrated the schools in 1960. Nobody in that classroom knew who Ruby Bridges was. These are not kids that have crossed the border. These are our kids. So we have to first start, in order to get to that big, hairy, audacious goal, we have to start by teaching our kids their history and not taking history out of the schools, but adding it to it. Because when I sat there and talked to the kids about this history and her continued commitment, because she's still living, her continued commitment through her foundation to eradicate racism and to eliminate bullying, especially electronic bullying. Her commitment still goes on from 1960 as a 6-year-old walking into school, being taught by one teacher who would teach her and no other students that would stay in her classroom. Her commitment still goes to eradicating racism and eliminating bullying. So we have to get to those goals. We got to take it step by step by step by step. And I think, to your point, we have to make sure that people know their history. Whether you
They-
come from this country, whether you are born here or whether you come into here, we know our history.
And we have to be careful that, you know, by trying to eliminate discrimination, we don't discriminate.
And if I could just chime in, because I also agree with what you said earlier, Director Frost. I'm going to look at this from an economics perspective, as I mentioned in my opening remarks about all of us obtaining or achieving our full potential. Imagine if every homeless person that we encountered, you recognize the commonality we all had. Imagine if every homeless person had a job, right? And they were contributing to society, what that would do for our economy, what that would do for the investments that we make in our communities to, to manage the homelessness, right? That wouldn't have to be expended. The Afghan refugees, when I look at my in-laws and I look at my grandparents when they came to this country, there were no programs or and a lot of the folk, everybody in this room, we're all immigrants. So you all can count back. There weren't these programs to help people who came to the country that day. And it is the greatest country in the world and it was a fantastic opportunity. But I guarantee you, if you ask any immigrant, it is very hard to make a living, very hard. So it's possible, but it's very hard. So, I mean, I'm talking, and I mentioned my whether it's my grandparents or my in-laws, but also if you go and interview, just ask any of the immigrants who opened a restaurant recently or whatever business they've done, because that's oftentimes their path, they will tell you, even if they're successful, how hard it is. So what we're trying to do is create equity, give them where they need it, where people need it in this region, give them that opportunity to achieve what a lot of us take for granted, right? I had the benefit that my parents did the hard work for me. And so my job is to continue that forward, right? And so I view this as we're just trying to pay it forward and we're trying to help everybody get the help that they need. We're not giving anybody a free ride. We're just giving people, the ones that may need a little more help, and encourage them to be that productive member of society. But I do agree with what you just mentioned about rallying behind. So we learned about the history, but also, and that's a total brainstorm, maybe some of these programs should have an offshoot where recipients of grants and things are learning about it, because I remember stories of my grandma and great grandmother. You learn the Pledge of Allegiance and everything when you're becoming a citizen, right? And actually, all of us go through civics in high school, but how many of us can talk about our community residents who don't understand governance and don't understand how our government works. So it's not just the refugees, right? It's our own citizenry that has trouble with that. So anyway, I'm just saying that's an interesting brainstorm that you just mentioned, and
Well, they have to assimilate to become part of our country.
just learn, right? So anyway, that's something we can talk about more later on, but.
Director Lauren also had comments.
I
Director Hugh
appreciate
Masters.
your question. I really agree with Director Jennings and Director Soon. I have a unique experience. I live in a really small rural town, Winters, and I happen to work really closely with the immigrant community. But when I say that, I mean there's people that we help become pass a citizenship test by providing attorneys. They've been here for 30 years, 40 years, 60 years. They have a green card. They're residents. They're legal. We go over the test with them that they have to learn civics. They have to learn about the Constitution. They have to learn about the Bill of Rights. They have to know laws. They can't have any criminal record. They have to be absolutely spotless to become citizens. There are people that maybe I serve with that have arrest histories that wouldn't allow them to become a citizen, that our green card holders would never become US citizens with those charges against them. They are spotless. And it is a great joy and honor of mine to help them through the process. And the questions are long. It's like 100 questions, and they have to pass that test. They have to learn it all and then pass it in a really short window of time. It's expensive, and they do it, and they love their country. When we come together and say our Pledge of Allegiance together, people are crying. They're so excited. And they, because they know that they've already been here. They know what this is about. They know that they're going to make a better opportunity for their families. And it is exciting. So that's my experience. The other part I wanted to say is when pretty early on in SACOG for me, Chair Zaragoza sent The Color of Law to everyone. I think it was, did we all get that?
Yeah, we all got it.
I will say that I had misconceptions about some of the redlining and so forth that I experienced in LA. I was a LA person before I came here, but when I read about it, and I read that some of the design that is most dangerous is hurts the elderly, people of color, it's marginalized communities. They are sacrificed. And it's our job as leaders to bring equity and to really think about everyone, not just the people that look like us. So I just wanted to add that and say that that is my passion in community service. And I'm really proud of it.
Thank you, Director. Director Hugh.
Thank you, Chair. This is a great conversation, and I just want to lift up some of the things that Director Jennings was talking about, in that so much of the work that we do is not about that walk-off home run. It's not about lighting the beam or celebrating in the end zone. It's about moving the chains and getting a new set of downs. And in order to really not become mired down in focusing on how far away the red zone is, let alone the end zone, occasionally you got to stop and turn around and look at where the downs started and how far down the field we've come. And so I think your point on that was very astute and good. And I apologize, I obviously was not here when this effort began. And so I just want to kind of get some context, and I really appreciate the comments that you just made. When we're talking about this with respect to the mission of this agency, are we talking about the equitable use of transportation funding so that we're focused on communities that, as mentioned, maybe have not been invested in the way that they should have or could have been, in order to sort of apply that equity towards the whole community? I mean, is that the effort here? But like, this isn't just having a deep dive on a Thursday morning to have a big conversation, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not, okay. I just wanted to double check.
Yeah. Well, the Brookings Institute came out with, this is, how many years ago now was that? The Brookings Institute study. Do you remember, James?
2017.
2017, and they analyzed what I mentioned about our full potential, our economic potential in this region was not being realized because we were leaving behind these disadvantaged communities. We weren't, getting them in the game, so to speak. So that's how the original conversation began. It's like, okay, how can we as a region uplift those areas, right? Continue using our sports metaphor, right? So we got 11 players on the football field instead of just 10, that kind of thing. So that's where it all started. And so we needed to figure out how we can bring all these things together.
Yes, Director.
Yeah, I just wanted to, follow up on some of the comments from Director Soon and also from him. When I was coming out of foster care in Sacramento County and I was homeless and trying to, make my way in the world, one of the number one challenges I ran into is I didn't know how anything worked. I'd never had a real mentor. I had no idea how any of the systems worked. I might as well have been from somewhere else. And, a big part of that was when someone showed me how to use public transportation, when someone showed me how I could get to work, when someone showed me how I could work the, different things to be able to get a better paying job, to be able to establish myself, move forward from there. And I think that education piece is huge because, whether it's understanding the core fundamentals of how our Constitution works and our legal process works, or it's just understanding the basics of how to go get your ID, of how to get your driver's license, how to, establish yourself and be able to build upon those building blocks. Those are huge. And again, when it's so confusing and overwhelming that, again, you don't even know how to use the public transportation system, it's really hard to figure out where to start. So having somebody you can go to who's going to help you figure out where to start, that's huge. And I just wanted to throw that out there.
Thank you so much. You just linked, I think for Director Hughes and others, right, that transportation investment and the education of the system, that's exactly what we're trying to get at. It's not just for the sake of it's not a social conversation for the sake of social conversation. It is to make an impact that you had. Thank you.
Any other comments? I will say to Director Hume's question, I think as well, is I feel like we've done, in a way, the easy part so far, which is just even setting, like, here's a baseline, right? Like, here's just an acknowledgement of things that have happened. The really tough work is still ahead of us, which is how do you uplift those areas that have been historically disadvantaged? And so that's going to be the work ahead of for SACOG is how you do that and how you do it in an equitable way as well for everyone that's here so that nobody feels that they're left behind as an agency or a city or a county. So I think that's threading the needle that's still going to be going forward too.
Chair Saragosa, if I can, look, I appreciate this conversation, right? Because we could have had our two directors here do the spike the football and light the beam, and everybody could have been like, oh, I guess that's nice. So thank you for Director Frost to have a conversation. We knew when we entered this work in a meaningful way in 2020, and many of you were here at that point. Well, actually, fewer and fewer of you were here at that point. This was not going to be easy, especially to take on race, racial equity, racial disparities. One of the first things you all asked in 2020 is, show us the data, right? So even in Director Hume, just the world in which we work, right? Transportation, housing, air quality, the built environment, getting to jobs, getting to schools, where's the data, right? Show us the disparities. And what we learned is A, it's not that easy to come by the data. B, when you can get some of it, there are disparities. They are glaring by race ethnicity, but not just by race ethnicity, right? By rural and urban, by age, by ability and disability. And that is a great segue into, hang in there, because we're just releasing today the latest regional progress report, which is right in front of you, which comes basically on the heels of 4 years of work to really dig into what's happening in our region, what's the dashboard, are we succeeding, are we failing, are we failing certain people in certain populations? And I I really want to impress upon all of you that the work of the REI working group is to not do a one-size-fits-all anything. We're not taking a one-size-fits-all version of racial disparities. We're trying to understand the region. That is why you've gone out and you've toured the region. That's why you like it so much, right? That's why we started in Roseville. And Director Bonnie Gore said, you know what? We've got disparities right here in Roseville. It's not just about the urban core. They show up differently, right? They show up differently. But as Director Jennings, of the many things you say that we listen to and remember is not everybody starts the same starting position. Not everybody starts the same starting position. It is, and that is really true in our region. So I'm happy for you all to continue this conversation, but I do think it's a really important conversation. I believe this work is very important just in the mission and the work of this agency and many of you as local leaders. And there is more data now than we've ever had before, partly thanks to the REI working group, the last 2 years actually weighing in on all of this. So that's my gentle segue, but it's your call. I want to move on.
So I just want everyone in the room to know that you're always invited to the REI working group, whether you're a board member, whether you're from the public, whether you're on the REI working group, wherever you come from, you're always invited. And we love what ideas that you have that we can embrace and take and become a part of our plan for the next 2 years. And so I'm encouraging you as we transition from this subject to the next. I'm encouraging you, and I know how busy you are, but we love busy people because you know how to get things done, right? So please take one meeting and start with that and then see where it leads you after you've gone to that one meeting. But I've enjoyed this conversation today probably as much as I've enjoyed any conversation since I've been at SACOG. And so I appreciate you for knowing that this is a safe place and having this kind of conversation is a good thing to do. So thank you so much.
Well said, Director Jennings. Thank you for everybody for the discussion. More to come. And with that, unless anyone has any other last parting words? Seeing that, all right, we'll go ahead and move on to our workshop for this morning. And that, as was just teed up, our regional indicators dashboard and 2024 progress report. And Garrett has this for us this morning. I know we have 45 minutes for us, but I'm going to ask you.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, I will shorten it down.
Shorten it down.
Yeah,
Thank
it's
you.
the
Appreciate
workshop.
it.
We can go pretty quick and we'll have plenty of time at the end for discussion.
And
So
I do want to, sorry, I just want to say, this is brand new. This is hot off the press. So take it home. When you do your updates to your boards and councils next week, talk about this. Garrett's going to walk you through it. It's a great resource, a great dashboard. Staff's been working really hard on this. So hot off the presses. It is in your hands today for the first time. Go ahead. Garrett.
Yep, absolutely. You're hearing it first, right? We're going to be talking today in the workshop about a new way we're releasing data and talking about it. And sometimes that's a dry topic, but I think we're going to have a good time today. I think we're going to talk about how it's of use for us as SACOG staff. And I want you to be thinking about how you as the board might use it and maybe other regional partnerships where it'll be used. We're going to be talking about two things, two sort of products or deliverables. First is this new online dashboard that houses all of this data. And then the second, as James held up, is the progress report itself, which is talking about a lot of the data. This is the workshop, so stop me at any point. I tend to get ahead of steam and just rumble away. So questions, but I'll go quick and we'll leave plenty of time for discussion at the end. Before we jump into sort of the results, just a little context. Of course, SACOG has long sort of maintained and tracked data. It's a key part of our planning process, but the way it's been done in the past has been a little bit more insular, right? We've long been a data resource for the region, but it's often sort of a one-off data request. And then from time to time, we do release a progress report. So the last one was in 2021. Obviously, a lot has changed since then. So that brings us today, right? In the interim, we've really looked at sort of how we go about collecting data. I won't go into the technical side of it, but we've revamped our approach. We've been scripting a lot of it, which allows us to get a lot more data, a lot more efficiently and much more timely. And we've paired that with some new tools. So you see in the slide deck and the report in front of you, the report, but I really want to call attention to the online dashboard. The link is in your staff report. It's up now on the website, which is a much more comprehensive look across 75 or even more indicators across the region, right? And what's different about it? it's now outward facing, right? Anyone from the public can access this dashboard. They can use it. It's more timely, right? We're going to be updating this at the speed the data comes available. That's not always, we're in 2024. If you're on the dashboard, you might see a lot of 2022, 2023. That's when the data has been released. So as soon as that data is coming out, we're updating the dashboard. And then it also allows us to be thinking about different scales, as we were just talking about in the last presentation, right? So much of what we do at SACOG, we report obviously at the 6-county region. In talking with partners, your jurisdiction staff and others, they are really interested in that in smaller geographies. So a lot of the indicators we have, right, the ability to look at a county, community level, and also compare what's going on in the Sacramento region to a set of peers across the country. We have a set of sort of mid-sized peers we look at, and we have a set of peers within California that we look at. And I said, again, it really gives us a broader sort of coverage. So that's the dashboard. Again, I'm not showing the dashboard in the presentation, but I really encourage you to look at it on the website and play around. And any feedback you have would be we're eager to hear. Brings us to the main thing I want to talk about, this 2024 progress report released as of today, this morning, right? What we wanted to do in this progress report is really think about what's new. As I mentioned, the last time we were in front of you for the progress report of 2021, obviously a lot has changed since then. Before I sort of do a whirlwind tour of some of those key findings, I just want to acknowledge all of the work that the project team has done, getting this sort of new data approach figured out, implementing it, bringing new tools, able to visualize it, and this new online dashboard was just a tremendous amount of work. We're really pleased about where we're at today. So I want to acknowledge the team, and many of them are here today to hear the presentation. So again, what I want to do now is just sort of talk about a breadth of topics, kind of like what's new in the Sacramento region for us to be thinking about how that might impact the work in the region, impact SACOG, and impact what's going on in your communities. And I'll go quick to wrap it up. The first is a very much a segue or continuation from our last items conversation, right? There's been a dramatic demographic transformation in this region. Oftentimes, these indicators we look at are changing very slowly, right? And you might, if some of the others in the dashboard, right, that you might see a sort of slower change through time, right? There's been a very dramatic demographic transformation in this region, right? So the tagline, if you can imagine, maybe you're picking up the newspaper, right? The Sacramento region now is a majority community of color, right? And I think we just wanted to ground it with connecting the dots to the conversation you all just had, right? With some new data that's come out about that. The dashboard itself, alluding to James's earlier point about the data, goes into much more depth about disparities by race, ethnicity, by income, and by geography. But we're actually not focusing on that in this presentation because today we're focusing on sort of some new things. Unfortunately, those disparities don't tend to change much through time. So as a separate conversation, I just want to call attention to, there's a lot of data within the dashboard that looks at differences by income, by race, ethnicity, and by geography, and that's in the dashboard themselves. We're going to jump around pretty quick to a variety of topics. We kind of wanted to ground it there of sort of, who we are, what our region looks like, and how that's changing. We'll jump now to the next one. Probably the most intuitive of all the findings, right? Again, the change in sort of how we have all commuted in the last couple of years. You can obviously, I think we all know what's going on in this. You can see the huge jump, right, in 2019, 2020, with a much more prominence in working from home. And again, these last few years have been so dramatic in terms of the change. You can imagine looking at this, you can see the line, up to 2019. The changes that happened were very small, a percentage point here, a percentage point there. There's been a dramatic change in the last few years and across a variety of these indicators. Pretty intuitive finding, but I think there's some interest when you sort of peel the onion to the next layer, right, and look at it a bit sort of like stratified by different sort of aspects. So we looked at that same issue of commuting and working from home by different income categories. And you can see the different lines are different sort of household income categories. In 2016, the sort of tendency to work from home, there was a slight differences by household income, but they're sort of clustered, a few percentage points difference. And you can see through time, right, it's much more likely now for sort of higher income and more moderate income households, they have the ability to work from home. Probably intuitive finding, but now there's some data sort of back that up. I was having an interesting conversation about this the other day about sort of what this might mean for the built environment and connect it to sort of your economic and land use, right? Well, service sector jobs, retail, it's much more likely that you'll need to be there present. But office space, what that might mean if this trend continues, right, for service sector or white collar workers, right, what that might mean for office space. For those technical people out there, I just want to call attention to this is a 5-year average. So it almost masks the impact, right, because this is a 5-year average. So we expect actually those lines to be even wider moving forward. Jump into another topic, which we know is of laser focused interest for this agency and this board, vehicle miles traveled. This is an area of a lot of interest for us, right? And we'll have more to say about that as we continue to update the dashboard through time. We will continue to add more indicators. As you can see, this is looking at the way SACOG defines VMT, household generated. Not surprising, there was a big jump from 2019 to 2020, and then it's been creeping up slowly. You see we end at 2022. It's an open conversation about what's been happening since then. We're actually looking right now at the 2023 data. We're very interested to see what that would say. But interesting, the decline for Sacramento region on a percentage basis is the largest of the 4 large regions, Sacramento, Bay Area, LA, and San Diego, on a percentage basis. So we thought that was an interesting finding. And then connecting the dots from your last workshop last month, and I know from hearing the conversation today, this morning too, it's a top of mind for so many of you, looking at the issue of collisions from the transportation sector. Last month, you did a deep dive just into the pedestrian collisions. This is looking at all collisions involving a vehicle. So vehicle to vehicle, vehicle with bicycle, vehicle with pedestrian. And the sort of orange line is the Sacramento region, and the blue line is California. This is on a rate-based measure, so we can compare. Of course, the key takeaway is the orange line seems to be much higher, the Sacramento region, than the state. From a different, this was fatalities and this is serious injuries. And you also see that big jump in the last few years. I know this is something that's based on the conversation from last month is on top of mind. And we heard it even today, the Dangerous by Design report. Sort of going to the next level, this is sort of looking at within the region, where are those collisions occurring? So that your plan has a definition of environmental justice communities. Those are low-end communities, or communities predominantly of color or of other vulnerabilities such as older adults. So the sort of static line at the bottom is the percentage of those communities to the region. They're about 1/3 of the region, but you can see a disproportionate amount of these serious traffic collisions occur within environmental justice communities. So this is the first time that I think we've done this type of sort of analysis of, where are these collisions occurring and in what type of communities? And then on the dashboard itself, you can even pull up an interactive map that lets you get down to intersection level data. That was sort of a quick, whirlwind tour through the transportation side. We'll go through 2 more topic areas, housing and the economy, and then we can bring it back for discussion. For those of you that joined us for the lunch between committees last week, you heard a great presentation from Evan Schmidt at Valley Vision, talking about sort of regional partnerships. SACOG has long played a role in supporting those partnerships with data. Obviously, the economy is a confusing topic, so there's no one sort of magical indicator. We pulled out a couple which we thought were of interest. This one in particular is looking at household income adjusted for inflation through time, right? You can see the trend over the last 10, 15 years has been an increase in regional purchasing power, a very promising sort of economic outlook for the region's residents, with a dip the last few years. But it's sort of a good way of showing median household income has been going up through the region. Of course, you could be thinking about how widespread that is, but sort of a positive story of momentum of what's going on in the regional economy as sort of the top level story. But if you sort of, again, sort of dig a little deeper and think about what that means, we've been working with our partners, obviously interested in where the region's economy is growing in terms of what type of jobs. So this is sort of jobs by sector or sort of by classification. We have a long-standing goal with working with our partners and sort of diversifying the type of jobs in this region. But you can see it seems that since 2019, so as the region has been growing the last couple of years, that the number of jobs that have been added have been in sort of the main things that we've seen in the last 20 years, jobs in healthcare and jobs in state government. So, there are advantages in that, and those tend to be, decent paying jobs, but there's been a long-standing goal to think about how can we grow other aspects of the economy, right? And if this data is accurate, right, it seems like the momentum still has been in those sectors as it has been for the last 10, 15 years. And then lastly, on the economy side, segue into the final topic, is just the role of housing plays, right, in the economy. This is not unique to the Sacramento region, but just reiterating just the price of housing, right, has increased. This is comparing housing costs to income. So if income and housing went up at the same time, this line would be flat. But you can see it's not been flat. There's been a dramatic jump in housing costs relative to income, especially in the last year, which we know is of serious concern for communities across the region. But momentum, again, we see it's a complicated story of a top line indicator, but then momentum and other things. This region's at a 20-year high in building new housing, right? and we'll see on the next slide, we're building more housing on a per capita basis than anywhere in the state. So, a testament to, I know it's been a conversation of interest for this board, and of course, obviously at your own local communities, right? There has been that uptick in housing production within our region.
The housing cost incorporates both rent and ownership costs?
Yeah, great question. This is solely housing ownership. So it is, you can think of it as the value sales price of the typical for sale home. We have a parallel indicator on rent that we're getting up. It's not up yet. It's a shorter time series, but the one you see, this is solely housing ownership costs. Yep. Last slide, and then I'll close it out with sort of some context. We talked about the regions at a 20-year high and sort of what it's been building in housing, but there has been a dramatic shift in what it's building in terms of a housing perspective. Obviously, a variety of housing type, but in the early part of the 2000s, it was very dominated by a single housing product, and now you see a mix of large lot single family, small lot single family, and more attached product, which I know from your conversation on the blueprint has been of top of mind. I think from the blueprint perspective, the land use assumptions you've adopted earlier this year would see that trend line continue even more into the attached and small lot single family house. I know I went through that quick because I know we're eager to move on, but I just wanted to call attention to, again, sort of the new way of doing this, right? And the use case. In the past, we put together this data. It's a lot of effort. We plan on doing this much more frequently. We plan on doing an annual progress report, but we also plan on having this be a resource. So I'll just give one use case. We long partner with agencies throughout the region. The Metro Chamber came to us about a month ago and said, hey, we're thinking about our study mission. We want to get some data on a couple regions and, Knoxville and Dallas and Boston and so on and so forth. What can you provide for us, right? In the past, it was a very labor-intensive process, right, of getting through it. Now, since we've set up this architecture, like all of those indicators you've seen and more on the dashboard, it's very easy for us to just sort of check the box and say, okay, let's pull Boston, let's pull Dallas. So, it became a sort of day and a half sort of worth of work to get that to them. So I just want to call attention to the value we think we've had in doing the work up front to do a new way to go about our data. And I'll end it there to see, first of all, any questions you have, but then also we're eager for comments about if there's anything you're hoping to see topic-wise that you didn't, and also any thoughts you might have of how this could be of use for your jurisdiction or for the region. Thanks.
Thank you, Garrett. A lot of information. Questions, comments? Yes, Director Hume.
Thank you, Chair. Great information, and data can be parsed so many different ways, and I'll try and keep my comments concise since we are running up against a hard stop here. But with respect to the shift from showing up to office versus remote working, obviously the pandemic was a huge causation there that had lingering effects in other parts of our society, particularly education. But what would be interesting to see is some of the correlation causation relative to what you touched upon, which is more of the lower paying jobs that are more retail focused, service industry focused. How have they been affected by that trend shift? Because I can tell you, certainly in downtown Sacramento, I mean, you see the restaurant trade and retail trade that is grossly affected by the particularly public sector remote working allowances that are in place. And so, without that intersectionality, it's tough to really see the true cost or benefit of some of these trend shifts. And then how they interface with suburban or urban neighborhoods.
Yep, absolutely. And just a quick follow-up on that. If you do look at the retail sector region-wide, it has lost employment since then. And the downtown Sacramento market is a particular example, but I think a lot of this is they're struggling to figure out how they come back, given that people aren't commuting and they're not traveling the way they used to. They're doing it differently.
Yeah, I mean, we've certainly seen that from a rural perspective as well. I mean, it manifests in a different way, but certainly the whether it's the minimum wage increase or other items, and we've had restaurants and businesses closed down because I think we're just close enough where you can go get maybe a higher paying job in Sacramento or maybe in Folsom to the detriment maybe of our local economy. So we are seeing some of that push and pull, I think, from a regional perspective. Yes, Director Prost.
This is really great. I was just thinking, I think it would be interesting to see the commercial real estate statistics, because we have statistics on the number of people working from home. I have a sense that that must be impacting commercial buildings in our region. I'd be curious to know how much and how that shift is gonna play out.
Yep, absolutely. We have our eye on a data source. It's a proprietary data source called CoStar that would get us that. So the sources we use is not something we can look at, but it's something we're very interested in. I think anecdotally, we know that it's been affected.
Through the chair, if I may. I just want to circle back around to Director Hume's thoughts. What is missing for me in many of these data points is causality. So when you talk about increased numbers of collisions in disadvantaged communities, that's a nice data point. But for us to be able to act upon that, we need to know the why. And I don't see that within this report.
Yep, absolutely. And it was in my talking points. I didn't mention it. The dashboard is meant to be the data point. It's not meant to be the why. And then through time, we want to be pushing out more of these sort of products that get at the why, and also, be working with partners. So it's a good point. This kind of unveiling was meant to be the scan. It wasn't deliberately meant to be, and this is because of it. We were trying to get the issues on the table, but you're absolutely right. In isolation of the why, it is just a piece of information.
If I can, I mean, one of the things that I think you all have gotten a sense of is we are sort of obsessed with the year 2035 and greenhouse gas emission reduction, right? As of, 10, 15 years ago, when we had the original blueprint, we would have had a whole long table of things this region cared about and indicators about access to jobs and quality of life, much like the table that Clint showed you earlier on that slide. And for better or worse, I think what we have around this table is a discussion around one indicator in 1 year, right? And it's does our plan achieve that one goal? And what we're trying to do here, because you all have requested this multiple times, is pull ourselves back a little bit to understand we're trying to accomplish a number of things. We need a dashboard to know if we're on track or we're off track, right? Because just a simple planned future and something we can model in 15 or 20 or 25 years, right, does not mean we're doing well. But this is the first step, I think. And as Garrett said, again, but a lot of work here on the part of staff. We've done a lot of coding of these data sources, so now we don't have to manually update many of these. So it's not going to give you causality, right? But it gives you a first sense of what we think the region should care about, what's important, and if we're kind of on the right track or the wrong track. Got to know that first, right, before you ask the questions about why.
Thank you, James. Garrett, how often will how evergreen will we keep this data?
Yep, absolutely. Our goal is to be as timely as possible. Underpinning this is a variety of data sources. So we think we're in a position to, as those data sources get updated, to turn around and very quickly get those updated. So it will be a bit of a rolling metric. What we've added for the more technical users is if you download the data, there's a sort of some documentation that said last updated and will be updated next by. So, a lot of this stuff, a lot of this derives from U.S. Census Bureau data, right? We're very eager to see the 2023 data. We'll be able to get that up early next year, but it'll sort of come in tranches. So we're also still thinking through from our staff perspective, right? The best way then to communicate, oh, we got 2023, new census data up. The dashboard will be updated with that, but how do we let the partners know?
Thank you. That'll be important because I think just like looking at polling data, it's always the crosstabs, right? That's where you're really getting to the gist of what's going on. So, yes. Dr. Schaefer.
Thank you. This is really interesting information, and it's almost, when we start talking about concepts like for new urbanization, there's consequences to all of those. Whatever's going to happen, happens. I see this kind of report as a reflection of what we've been driving as a region and the state has been driving toward, and that is more concentrated transit corridors, more cars stuck together. And I don't want to jump to conclusions like Director Hume and Director Joyner have talked about, but we don't have a choice but jump to conclusions on this. And that's how do we know what direction to go. Certainly, again, this particular report, and I think it's really interesting data to look at, but it is a sort of a culmination of, this is what we have been driving for years, and now we're seeing it happen. So that's just my observation.
Thank you, Director. Yes. Director
Yeah,
Vaughn.
I know with the rural areas, like folks want to work from home, but online access is atrocious. Because I remember this board had a consultant with the Mather like general plan, and I recognized him that he lived 3 blocks from me, and he sold his house and moved to Midtown because of it.
No, good call out. No, we certainly have those issues up our way too, or at least limited availability of product as well to mitigate those things. Other questions or comments? All right, now we're like back on time. All right. All right, well, Garrett, thank you very much. Appreciate that. More to come, I know. All right. James, you wanted to add any final comments on this item?
No, I just, look, again, we were a little squeezed there on time. I know when we had, I think the last one we did, Garrett, was what, 2 years ago, 18 months? It was a while ago.
2021, yeah.
2021,
Yeah.
my God.
Early
3 years.
2021, yeah.
We had a whole board meeting on this and everybody ate it up. We had a bit more time. Please do share this. As I said, I think it's a great thing to share out with whoever you may, but especially your report outs to your boards and councils. There, the commuting and the telework, it's a real thing, right? And I just want to connect that back to it was a sort of a line in Clint's presentation, but we are assuming different travel patterns based on what's just happened the last 5 years. That's actually an assumption in our plan. And it is that, and we will be using that with the California Air Resources Board because of this data, right? So this is why this is just so important to understand what's truly happening. But again, a lot of credit to the staff, and we've been working very hard with the chamber, but GSAC, Valley Vision, the local chambers and the ethnic chambers, just to make sure we're tracking the right kinds of indicators here that could be useful across the board for a lot of our partner agencies. So more to come.
Thank you. And do we have any public comments on this item?
There's no public comment.
All right, great. All right, then that leads us into our next item, which are reports. And I was going to see, James, do you have anything you want to report out on?
Well, yeah, just a couple of things. One is, remember, we're through the end of the calendar year, going to keep the board meetings beginning at 9 a.m. So your final board meeting of the year will be 9 a.m. on Thursday, December 19th. Believe it or not, we're at the end of the year. We are, as you know, we're going to be saying goodbye to a number of board members. I hope we're not saying goodbye to as many as it might be. I'm hoping, but we say goodbye to a minimum number of board members. But we're gonna be saying goodbye. And so we have plaque presentations. And so if you're retiring, if you're stepping off the board, please, Lynette will give you the invitation, but we'd like to have you come back. And because as you remember, December of the even years, you all like to honor your peers who have put in the time and the service on the board. We will also, at the December board meeting, have the election of next year's chair and vice chair. I know the nominating committee is working on that as we speak. We have committees the first week of December. Remember, this year we have like one less week between Thanksgiving and Christmas, if you remember the quirk of the calendar. So it's going to come fast and furious. We have committees that first week of December, transportation and land use. And in between those committees, by popular demand, you all have asked to dig into our SACOG travel model, right? So we had a lot of discussions earlier this year about the travel model and what it produces and how it works and the results. So nice informal lunch with the staff here that first Thursday of December for the travel model. And that's it from me.
All right. I have one. So you will be getting, look in your emails, you'll be getting an email from Lynette for your board committee assignments. I think that goes out today. Is that today? It will go out today. All right. And if we could get that in by December 2nd, staff has time and new chairs to do committee assignments. That'll give us some time so that by the time, I don't know if I think we announced those in
So these are your committees for next year. You're returning next year.
Understood, but you've got incoming representatives.
Sure.
that will not be seated at that time.
Absolutely. And this is the way it often happens, right? Is we won't know that. And so we want to, and Vice Chair soon, if he is chair next year, assume that will happen. He wants to know in advance kind of who's requesting what committee. As soon as we know other board members, new board members, we'll add that to the mix. But the sooner we can start this process, the better. So we get all of you who are returning next year to give us your committee preferences. And then there's 2 working groups for next year, right? I've talked to Vice Chair soon about this, the Mega Region Working Group and the REI Working Group. So, and we actually do have looks like we'll have another appointment to the Delta Protection Commission as well.
It'll get us about 80% of the way there.
Mr. Chair, just
Yeah, yeah.
just want to make sure, just clarify under our bylaws, we as a board do not have the ability to get rid of certain board members. ourselves. Just want to clarify, because I have a recommendation.
You do.
We're accepting motions,
Yeah,
so.
yeah, You have to do it in front of the Nugget, out in the.
Survivor vote on December 19th.
Yes. All right, do we have other director any reports up they'd like to add?
Chair.
Yes.
If no one else does, first I'm looking around.
Think you're good.
What, we may have another opportunity on December 19th, but in the event we don't, Chair Saragosa, I just want to acknowledge your work and service throughout the year and getting us to this point. We appreciate your leadership and service to this board. Great job. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It's been an honor to be chair of the board, and it's been fun over the last 6 years. So thank you very much. All right, with that, we have 3 receive and file items, so please take the time to look over those in all of your free time. And with that, at 11:03, I will adjourn to